Weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the Money Hour Radio Show, Saturday afternoons at 3. Brought to you by Pure Shale Financial Group at pureshalefinancial.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and John Cass in for Amy this morning. JohnCassNews.com. Speaking of, we were talking about Gen Zers and some who think working for themselves, starting a small business is something they want to do, but are already overburdened by the 9-to-5 workday. They have no idea.
And no time to work out, no time to club.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
Mm-hmm. So it seems to me that K through 12 education is, even though it's not really primarily a federal issue, just education generally is a real mission field and political opportunity for the Republican Party. And I don't know that they're fully capitalizing on it at present. Some at the state level with the school choice movement advancing, but not fully. I mean, what are we seeing when we're talking about petulant Gen Zers as we were before the break, or we're talking about this rank ignorance that you're seeing on college campuses from students and professors alike in the context of the Hamas terrorist attack? So many illustrations of this. A good piece by Eva Moskowitz, who is the founder of the Success Charter Schools, Success Academy Charter Schools. She reminds us something here, too, because the conversation is always driven by spend from the left, and then Republicans not wanting to be seen as, oh, what are you, against kids? You against education? You against teachers? Though they want to just keep the debate on the spend angle that the left takes. Well, that's a mistake. System change is the real conversation here. That's what school choice is about. But it's bigger than that. Moskowitz writes, do you know we spend more than $800 billion annually on K-12 government schools in America? Schools in the United States spend an average of $19,380 per pupil, which is more per child than all but one other developed nation. That's Luxembourg.
Jesus. Really?
Adjusting for inflation, spending grew by 244% over the last 50 years. That's 6% of our GDP. Also more than many other North American and European nations, which average about 4.85% of GDP. So,
it's funded by homes.
It's primarily funded by property taxes in Illinois. Not every state does it that way. Indiana doesn't, for example. But the point is the overall spend. So the teachers need more money. So we spend more than just about every other nation. We've gone up at a 45-degree angle in that spend in real dollars in the last 50 years. And what do we have? Well, we have smaller class sizes. Classes are too big. Down from 22 students per teacher in 1970 to 15 in 2021. We have higher high school graduation rates and lower dropout rates. More kids have access to computers and internet than ever before. 97% of 3 to 18-year-olds. We need an iPad in every classroom. We got it. That all sounds like good news. So why are Americans falling behind globally, behind China, Japan, Canada, Poland, Slovenia, and many more? 36 countries outperform the United States in math at the high school level. They did slightly better in science. Reading comprehension, we're 17, we're 12 in reading comprehension. But the gap between high performers and low performers widened. About one-fifth of American 15-year-olds scored so low on the PISA test that it appeared they had not mastered the reading skills expected of a 10-year-old. One-fifth. Where are we now, post-pandemic? Well, that was a disaster, but it was a disaster before the pandemic. Only 25% of kids are doing math at grade level. Only 31% are reading at grade level, nationally. And then you wonder, with the increasing politicization of schooling from pre-K through post-secondary, what fills the void? Well, that fills the void, political activism. And then you're surprised from the billionaire set on down. You're shocked by what you see on the campuses of Ivy League schools and elite schools like Northwestern or Stanford, what you see from the professorate and the students alike. What you hear from Gen Zers who have this completely distorted view of what it takes to make it and be independent and successful doing something they like. For more on this and other issues, pleased to be joined by Renaissance man. He can tackle anything. He's David Harsanyi. He's a senior editor at the Federalist. He's also the author of Eurotrash, Why Americans Must Reject the Failed Ideas of a Dying Continent. David, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
What about just the opportunity because of what's happened on college campuses and because of all the trans stuff and parental authority issues at the K through 12 level? What about this opportunity that's present to talk about how we do education in America writ large?
Well, it's a major issue that I don't think we're taking advantage of on the right. In Virginia, for instance, I think it was a huge issue for Youngkin, who is now a pretty popular governor in Virginia. The first thing I think we need to do is stop calling it public schools and start calling it state or government-run schools, because that's what it is. And then you get a better sense of what's going on in any kind of, and I'm not saying we're a totalitarian society, but in any kind of society like that, you start with the children, you brainwash them, which is what happens in many districts, most districts in some way. And then you send them to these hermetically sealed ideological, factories where you pump out credentialed dimwits, mostly in the elite schools. And then they, these people who go to those schools then go to, the State Department, or they're your lawyer, or, these positions of power, and ruin the country.
What about editors of major newspapers? Yeah.
Exactly. Or you're going to be at a major newspaper. So, when they talk about like the anti-Semitism we see now, when you have a Nazi standing in front of Disney, like afterwards he goes back to making meth or whatever he does. But the other side, they go into institutions. They have the power and the reach. And I'm sorry to jump to that topic and segue there, but, I think it's a pretty clear line for why that happens.
Credentialed Dimwits, by the way, was the name of my high school band, Talking Heads cover band. We killed with, anyway, so I mean, in terms of Republican leadership on the issue, I mean, again, mostly state and local, but you can certainly talk about it, particularly when you're talking about college and how the federal government underwrites the student loans that send all these kids to amass $80,000 in debt to get some BS marketing degree. Why, especially like a DeSantis is perfectly positioned to talk about this as he sits on the most expansive school choice program in the country in Florida. And we just don't see, I know there's these geopolitical matters and taxes and this and that, but nobody's sort of putting it together in a unified vision of what a K through 12 education and post-secondary education could and should be.
I think it's more complicated than a lot of people think in the sense, I remember this in Colorado when I lived there, a lot of, let me put it this way, the only organization in America right now who wants and fights for segregation are teachers' unions. And what happens is you have a lot of people have good schools. They live in rich neighborhoods or well-off, middle-class neighborhoods, and they have good schools, and they're nervous about changing the system. So you have to really try to convince them as well that it's a good idea to integrate schools and to let people have choice and let parents move their kids around. They feel like their schools are going to get worse. I mean, this is my personal, experience in this. So maybe each state needs a different kind of vision. So I'm not really against doing it statewide, but I think that you're right. There's an overall case to be made that presidential candidates should be making, that this is a good type of policy that the federal government would help states institute rather than strengthening teachers' unions, which is what the president does right now.
Yeah, and it would be an opportunity for somebody to step outside of the pack at the presidential level, like DeSantis, and drive a completely different conversation rather than sort of be bogged down by, parsing DeSantis's answer on Ukraine funding versus Ramaswamy's versus Nikki Haley's. I mean, this just becomes white noise here, and that's to the benefit of the front runner, Donald Trump, of course. There's a prospect that this next debate coming up in early November, next Republican presidential debate, may only have a handful of candidates, maybe only 3 on stage in terms of who qualifies and who wants to participate. Ramaswamy has said he may not want to participate because people were too mean to him in the last debate. So if it's Christie, Nikki Haley, DeSantis, does that provide a path to a more interesting primary campaign, or do you think people just sort of say, well, that just shows you how irrelevant this process is. The primary's over, Trump's the nominee, and let's just get on with it?
Well, I don't want to be too cynical, but I just don't think these things matter at all anymore. Trump, I think that, personally, I think DeSantis has the best case to be president right now. But,
yes.
That's not what people think. Most Republican primary voters obviously want Donald Trump. Donald Trump, is doing the right thing. I mean, why should he debate anyone when he's up 50 points or whatever it is in those polls? And you have other candidates that split maybe the rest of those votes. So you never know how those votes would split anyway.
Have any of you been intrigued by the support Nikki Haley's getting from National Review and Fox? It seems Fox has become the neocon network now, and National Review is carrying her water. And I just wonder what you think as conservatives, because I'm a conservative, and I don't see her as a conservative. I don't even know why she's running, but there she is, running.
Well, I think people are grappling to find kind of a consensus candidate other than Trump, meaning someone who can bring populists together with the, older school, more libertarian-minded, I guess, or maybe even the neocons. I don't think Nikki Haley's that person. But, maybe because of what's going on in the world right now, they feel like she's better, and I can't speak to it. I just don't think she's going to have a chance, and so I don't really get that support for her either. But honestly, I just don't think there are many, again, I just think DeSantis is the candidate who's – I don't support politicians. I just think when you look at just accomplishment and, the way they comport themselves in general, I just don't – it's a mystery to me why he doesn't have more support. But then again, the electorate's a big mystery to me.
But so you agree that she is the neocon candidate?
Well, certainly if you're a neocon, you're going to like her best for sure, yeah. I wouldn't say she's not a conservative. She's had some conservative policies in South Carolina when she was there. I think she's a school choice supporter and stuff like that. But I get your drift for sure.
Yeah, the other thing too is, like you say, they seem DeSantis has not been able to move, so now it's time to find somebody else who, is moving a little bit, and maybe we can help her move more, and it fits some other boxes that the Republican establishment likes. So when donors start to migrate, then you have your media moment too. So if this is a fait accompli, Biden versus Trump versus RFK Jr., don't forget about him. The polling is interesting on that, though. That Siena poll that came out this week, where Trump is up 5 on Biden, but if you include RFK, his lead expands to 7, and RFK's percentage of the vote, RFK Jr., is not inconsequential. Those numbers look very much like 1992, with its being like 38 to 31 to 21. The RFK Jr. factor, what's your handle on that?
I'm a bit skeptical that he's going to pull those kind of numbers. I'm not saying he won't pull any, but as soon as people start highlighting him and saying, "Oh, remember that time you hung out with Farrakhan?" I think maybe some of that support maybe goes away. So, what happens a lot is you have candidates who have not had the spotlight on them, who, no one's done any digging on them. Trump hasn't come up with a nickname for them yet, you know what I mean? And they do well in polls, but I'm pretty skeptical that guy's going to pull a ton. And what makes me nervous is he actually, I see some conservatives who like him, I guess, because of his vaccine position, whatever it is. I just don't think he has pro-like numbers coming in at the end of the day.
But he does have money. He is raising enough money to stick around and compete.
Yeah, for sure. He will be somewhat of a factor. I just don't think. I don't know.
20. Yeah. I agree with you. I think it's fine when he's running against Biden, but under scrutiny when it's the main event, people might make some different decisions. I agree.
Dan, since you brought up the Siena poll, I'd like to ask David, what do you make of the Siena poll's look at immigration, particularly as it relates to minorities, to black voters, black Democrats, Latinos, etc., as they're dealing with the overcrowding that's coming from the opening of the borders, Biden's opening of the borders? How's that going to play?
I think people underestimate what a big issue that was back when Trump first won. I think that was the propelling issue for him, actually. And I think it will be now, too. I mean, it's a mess down there. And, there are – how can I say this? I think the presidential election is the farthest removed or the closest to your ideology, meaning locally you'll vote for whoever helps you. But when it comes to the presidency, you're usually voting for your party, I think. But, I mean, look at the Biden presidency. Nothing has gone right. Everything is a mess. He's a mess. I mean, when I see Trump up 5 points or whatever, I totally believe it. I think Trump can easily win this thing. I'm not saying he will, but he could easily win this thing because we have a president who's completely incompetent, can barely speak. So I think immigration would be a big part of that. What's going on down there, I think, affects a lot of people. And when you start sending them to big cities, all of a sudden everyone's concerned. So I think that was a great idea. Yeah.
Chicago,
New York.
New York. Chicago is I just did a piece on the mayor of Chicago having a panic attack, actually 2 panic attacks. I think they required medical assistance, but I'm not quite sure. But he's melting down, and other mayors are melting down too. I'm sure Adams in New York is not happy.
I think that Martha's Vineyard stunt was the best thing that ever happened in this debate because it just showed the hypocrisy, frankly. And I think to many, and scared a lot of people who live in nice places that they're going to actually have to deal with this problem as well, and not just hire people to do their lawns, but actually have to deal with everything else that goes with unfettered illegal immigration.
Beyond just getting a Speaker of the House, which was the first order of business, what is your sort of level of optimism about the kind of job that Mike Johnson can do and the kind of representative he'll be of the Republican Party on the national stage?
When I first heard that, he sounds like a guy who, like a European director in a European movie would name as the token American Mike Johnson, like the most milquetoast guy ever. But I have to say, when I've seen him speak, he seems like he's going to be fine. I don't know. I noticed Democrats were really mad that he was praying and believed in God and stuff like that. So
yeah, of course, it's offensive.
Yeah, more upset about that than they are about Ilhan Omar being in Congress or Hamas marches. So, I don't know. I think the whole, I just think they're kind of a mess, frankly. So anything they get done, I'm sort of like, well, that's impressive because I don't expect that much right now. But he seems okay, I guess. I don't know that much about him, to be honest.
David Harsanyi, senior editor at The Federalist, author of Eurotrash, Why America Must Reject the Failed Ideas of a Dying Continent. David, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Always. Thank you.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Hi, I'm Martha Stewart. Every year, more than 4 million pets enter shelters here in the United States. My friends at American Humane have been helping animals since 1877.